This message is for you. They're asking who trained you? Where did you learn this? What school? What program? What organization? In silence, just pure screaming silence, because nobody knows. They pulled your records, fetched your history, tracked your movements, interviewed people from your past, trying to find the moment, the person, the institution that created you. They were looking for a sensei, a coach, a mentor, some shadowy figure who whispered secrets in your ear and turned you into what you are. But you know what they found? Absolutely nothing. No training montage, no elite program, no secret society. Just you, alone in the dark, figuring it out in real time while the world kept kicking you in the teeth. And that's the part that terrifies them more than anything. Because if you can become this dangerous, this capable, this unstoppable without anyone teaching you, then their entire framework for understanding power just collapsed. You weren't supposed to be possible, and yet here you are, walking evidence that the system missed something critical. See, they have a map in their heads, a clean, predictable map of how people gain skills and power and influence. You go to the right schools, you network with the right people, you learn from established masters, you climb the ladder that they built, you follow the path that they paved. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. That's how they maintain control, because they can see you coming. They can predict your moves. They can manage your growth. But you threw a grenade into that entire model because you didn't follow any of those steps. You didn't ask for permission. You didn't wait for guidance. You just grabbed your raw pain and confusion and failure, and you alchemized it into something that they can't categorize. You taught yourself in the trenches while they were writing textbooks on why people like you don't exist. They sent people to study you, not just casual observers, but serious professionals. The kind who can read micro expressions and behavioral patterns and psychological markers. These people spent weeks watching you operate, taking notes, building profiles, trying to reverse engineer your skill set. And every single one of them came back with the same disturbed conclusion. Whatever this person knows, they didn't learn it from anyone we can identify. There's no teacher, no program, no methodologies that we recognize. It's like they invented their own language, and now they're fluent in it while we're still trying to figure out the alphabet. One analyst literally wrote in their report, "This subject appears to have developed capabilities through pure exposure to adversity with no formal instruction. Recommend extreme caution as their unpredictability stems from operating outside unknown training networks." You want to know what's really happening here? You became the glitch that they can't patch, the virus that they can't code against, the threat that they can't prepare for. Because all their defenses are built on recognizing trained individuals. They know how Navy SEALs think because they trained them. They know how CEOs operate because they went to the same schools. They know how manipulators work because they studied the techniques. But you're operating on instinct, refined through suffering, on patterns that you discovered by surviving, on skills that you developed because no one was coming to save you. You're a self-created weapon, and that makes you more dangerous than any professionally trained operative because you don't think like them. You don't move like them. You don't have their limitations or their predictable blind spots. Here's what happened in that room after the man in the suit asked his question and got silence in return. Panic. Not loud panic, not screaming panic, but the cold, calculating kind where everyone realizes simultaneously that they're dealing with something outside their control. Because if you taught yourself, If you figured this out alone, that means anyone could. That means that the barriers that they thought were protecting their positions of power are actually illusions. It means the game is no longer theirs to control. One person at that table said it out loud. If they did this without training, without resources, without support, then what happens when they start teaching others? What happens when this becomes a movement? What happens when people realize that they don't need permission or institutions to become powerful? That question hung in the air like smoke because they all knew the answer. Their entire system collapses. So they started digging deeper, obsessively, desperately, trying to find something, anything that would explain you in terms that they could understand. Maybe you had a mentor that you're hiding. Maybe you went through some secret program. Maybe there's a book or a course or a teacher somewhere in your past that holds the key. But the more they dug, the more evidence they found of the opposite. Late nights alone, failures nobody saw, breakdowns nobody comforted, lessons learned through blood, sweat, and tears with no guidance. They found proof of isolation, of rejection, of doors slammed in your face, of systems that were supposed to help you completely failing. And somehow, impossibly, you took all that absence, all that emptiness, all that abandonment, and you weaponized it into expertise that they can't replicate in their fancy training programs. And let's get specific about what you did that they can't explain, because this is where it gets beautiful. You develop situational awareness that rivals people with decades of tactical training, but you learned it by surviving in environments where nobody was watching your back, where threats came from every direction, where one wrong move meant destruction. You built negotiation skills that closed deals and diffused conflicts better than MBAs with six-figure educations. But you learned it by having to talk your way through situations where you had zero leverage and everything to lose. You created strategic thinking that outmaneuvers people with military backgrounds. But you developed it by playing chess with life when you couldn't afford to lose a single piece. Every skill that they pay hundreds of thousands to learn, you acquired for free through necessity, through pain, through having no other choice but to evolve or die. The man in the suit, he's not sleeping well anymore. None of them are, because you're not an isolated incident. You're a pattern that they're starting to see everywhere. People with no credentials outperforming people with every credential. People with no training dismantling people with elite training. People who came from nothing achieving things that were supposed to require everything. And it's making them question the entire infrastructure that they built their lives on. The schools, the programs, the networks, the gates that they put up to control who gets access to power. Because if those gates can be bypassed, if someone can just walk around them by teaching themselves in the dark, then what exactly have they been selling all these years? What's the value of their educations if raw determination and survival instinct can produce better results? Now they're in crisis mode, trying to figure out how to respond to you, how to contain you, how to neutralize you without making you a martyr. They can't challenge your credentials because you don't have any to attack. They can't question your training because admitting that you have none just makes you more terrifying. They can't dismiss you as lucky because the results speak too loudly. Keep going.